There's this assumption that as time goes on, as our society grows and years keep going and our culture keeps living, that we are progressing and that we are getting better. I mean, nobody defines what better is, but, we're getting better. We're definitely better than before. And it's this linear, no stops, no backwards, no junctures. It's just overall for humankind, as the years go on, we get better. That's just incorrect because one, there's a bunch of people on this earth and some of us benefit from some progresses and some don't benefit. And there's no way of saying overall we are getting better as a culture because there's one specific group that's getting better maybe and others are lacking. And there are not necessarily this one way, one straightforward, only getting better and it will happen each year, it'll get considerably better each time. That's not how our world works. We're very reactionary. So the main part of this lecture, informal as it is going to be comparing films that are at least 40 years older and another that's from 1933 to more recent films and showing how there may be better representations of marginalized groups than the ones that we have today. And there's this underlying reasoning that I have, and that is that as these issues of marginalized people get more and more prominent and there's more and more acceptance and need for that and pushback, then there's this reaction to reinforce the hegemonic ideals that rules our society. So the argument is that earlier on, when it's not as big of a deal to have a gay character, or that feminism isn't trying to upheave the whole system, when it's just kind of more of a backdrop, or it's more of a can we just vote? Then it's less of an issue to have multifaceted female characters, whereas now, as more and more push is coming to try to get more equality or seeing women as humans, there's more pushback, and then media is reinforcing that whole idea that women are submissive or one-dimensional or need men and so on and so forth. That idea that it's not necessarily we are just constantly progressing, it's that we are reacting and acting based on all these issues, and so it's not a clear shoot for progress. Media is not a reflection of our society. Media is reacting to our society, the political events, the everyday events that are happening. And we are reacting to media because we're learning the codes that they're telling us. They're reinforcing these structures that we are then keep going on. And that got a little weird word-wise. The idea that media is simply a TV version or a movie version of our lives isn't quite true, because they are still an active participant in society, and they're not just passively showing us what we are. A really quick, easy way to explain this idea of reinforcement is looking at Modern Family, because yes, there are two gay characters and they're not, dying, which is appreciative. They are still these stereotypes, and they're still only acceptable when they're trying to be that nuclear suburban family, two white men, upper middle class, that have really good jobs and who have a child and who are still acting within our idea of normal. It's just the fact that it's no longer a wife and a husband, it's two husbands. So that idea that oh yeah, we're accepting, but only within these strict rules that we still have established. I'm going to start by comparing Dog Day Afternoon, which is a 1975 film, with Dallas Buyers Club, which came out in 2013. Dog Day Afternoon is about two men that try to quickly rob a bank, but that doesn't happen, and it just unfolds to be quite a bit. And you're originally led to believe that the main character, Sonny, is just this straight man who's married to a wife and has kids and is just, for some reason, robbing a bank. But then you find out that he actually has also married a transgender woman named Leon, and that he is robbing the bank to get gender reassignment surgery for Leon. We've got Sonny, who's bisexual, polyamorous, married to a transgender woman. Just kind of overall not anything you ever see in media, basically. You've got Leon, who, while she's trying to not be with Sonny, it's not because that like their queer love can't exist, it's that they're not healthy for each other, and that, you know, there's a lot of other shit going on that makes it much more believable of a relationship, not that they're simply like, it's just can't happen. Like, they already got married, so it obviously could happen, it's just that other things happen. People just die in queer films, and so the ability for them to just not die, or, you know, Sonny does go to jail, but it's not because of anything with his queer identity. I mean, indirectly it is, because he's trying to get money for gender reassignment surgery, which that by itself is more of a critique on our lack of health care for trans characters or trans people, and not necessarily a critique on, and not necessarily a problem with trans characters themselves. The outside society of Dog Day Afternoon is not super accepting, and that's totally understandable, because society is not super understanding of queer characters and queer people. But the relationship between Sonny and Leon is so not disputed. Like, they're not trying to change each other, they're totally accepting, and like, at least of their queer identities, and then they're kind of trying to move past the unhealthiness. And there's a shot with a bunch of gay men who are supporting Sonny, and I think that's probably the most realistic representation of what it is like to be a queer person in this world, because you have a whole lot of support from your queer family, and then society is the one that's misgendering you, misinterpreting, misunderstanding you, and then you just have to kind of deal with that, but you have a lot of support from other people. And I think other movies, there's this binary where either everybody accepts you, which is really unrealistic, or nobody accepts you and you're all alone and then you die, which is also, there's some people that happens to, but it's also not super realistic for a lot of people in their lives. Dallas Buyers Club is a film centered around a straight cis man named Ron in 1985 when he is diagnosed with AIDS, and his dealing with it, and then his eventual founding of Dallas Buyers Club, which is getting unapproved and experimental drugs that will hopefully help with that will hopefully treat AIDS quicker than what the government is willing to help with. There is a transgender woman in this film, and her name is Rayon. However, she dies, which is a theme and pattern for queer characters, especially trans characters. They just die all the time. She is also more of a plot device, or she's also more of a tool for character development for the right main character, and she doesn't really have much to do with her other than being this trans character that will teach Ron to not be homophobic and transphobic and all of those fun things. The filmmakers even admitted that they created Ron just to be teaching the main character tolerance, and that's more highlighted when she dies, and it's obvious that, and that's supposed to show how much Ron has come from and how much he has overcome, and how much better he is because the holy trans character came and made you a better person. Both of these films have problems. I'm not saying that Dog Day Afternoon is a perfect film. Like, both the trans women are played by cis-man actors, and there is a big issue that queer actors have with being able to play a character and play their identity without it being a stereotype, or, you know, just simply getting a role. That's really hard to do. The relationship between Sunny and Leon are not, it's not really dealt with, or it's not really explained what's the problem or why it's unhealthy, or why Sunny is doing all of this stuff. But, you know, so it's still showing that, so it's another example of an unhealthy relationship, except I do think it's a little better because it's not an unhealthy relationship because of this, like, unhealthy obsession with each other, or this reaction to society making them unhealthy. It seems like Sunny might have some, like, mental health issues, and not necessarily issues because he's bisexual or not straight. Next films I'm going to compare is with regard to Black women and their representation. I'm going to compare She's Gotta Have It, which was from 1986, and Precious, which was from 2009. She's Gotta Have It is a film by Spike Lee about a woman and her 3 lovers and the relationships that they have, and the male lovers' inability to let her be polyamorous, and their want for her to pick one and to settle down. In the end, she doesn't pick any of them, and she says that she's probably going to continue to be polyamorous, which is awesome because there are so many polyamorous relationships or characters that get, like, kind of, you know, punished to the point where they do become monogamous, or they get to the point where they find one person that's, like, kind of becomes their primary partner and then just becomes their only partner. And so I think that it's super awesome that that at the end she's totally just like, nope, probably still gonna just keep sleeping with people and keep dating multiple men, and that's fine. She's seen as completely independent. She has her own apartment. She's got no need to settle down, and she, you know, is constantly being described kind of just as this, like, phenomenon that just kind of, where, you know, you just get this, like, respect and awe for her, and you see her as a multifaceted character. Whereas in Precious, it's a movie about a teenage girl who is basically just dealing with the shit that the world throws at her, because she's seen as just this marginalized person to be pitied, that she's like, she's Black, she's a woman, she's overweight, she has a baby, she has an abusive mother, she lives in an urban area, she's not well off, all of these things, just to show that she's, like, yes, that the system sucks, but that white people have to save her, or it's just too bad that it sucks and we're just going to pity her and then feel better about ourselves and then not do anything to try to change the system. The film also has really problematic ways of representing a black family, as far as like an emotionally abusive mother, having that be like obviously that Precious doesn't love her and automatically hates her, which is a very complicated relationship between abuser and abused, and that the savior is going to be the government or Social Security, and that the obvious solution is for Precious to just be taken away and to not interact with her mother anymore. Like, that solution is not necessarily the best solution, and in a lot of ways it's much more complicated than that, and it's not and it's really not a good way of treating people who do have problems. It's just being like, oh well, let's just take everybody else away from you and then just throw you away because you're useless and you can't be helped, and it's just not really great. I want to quickly compare Golddiggers of 1933, which came out in 1933, with Bridesmaids, which came out in 2011. Bridesmaids is not as like terrible as I'm making the other films out to be. I love Bridesmaids, but Golddiggers of 1933 centers around 3 female characters who are trying to deal with unemployment and the depression, and are just overall dealing with money, and through that they find their solution from production, from men, from exploitation of men, from helping each other. I think there is this kind of escape that they're trying to do through musicals, but and it is this kind of fantasy that you can find a rich man and then your troubles will be gone, and one of them is actually truthfully not like falling in love with her rich boy that she finds. Like, the other 2 like fall in love, but there's one that literally is just exploiting a man and getting him for his money, and I think that is such a good way to counter the other 2, because, you know, there's always that argument like, oh well, like in the end they fall in love. It's like, well, one of them actually doesn't. One of them totally just uses a man for his money, and I think that's awesome. And it's not centered around men at the beginning. That's not their main issue. It's a solution to some of their problems, which is more of a critique of just how not good the situation is for women. But it's a movie about women trying to deal with the depression. Whereas Bridesmaids, I think it's a great movie and I love it in a lot of ways. It is still centered around men and still centered around a wedding and the, you know, there's all these things the main character is going through. Like, she loses her job, she's not married, she doesn't have a boyfriend, her sex life is pretty sad. Her friends are kind of moving on, and she loses her apartment as well, and there's all these issues, but the main step that shows that she's doing better is that she finds a stable boyfriend and that they are gonna live happily ever after, and that the ongoing problem of her friend's wedding kind of maybe not working out, and then her freaking out at the end while she still gets married and still okay. And it's good in a lot of ways, but it's still the ending that makes it a happy ending is her finding somebody, not her finding a place to live, a job, a good support group, you know, properly communicating with her mother, finding good roommates, like none of those happen. It's just that she suddenly finds a boyfriend and doesn't run away from her boyfriend or from that opportunity, and then that means that everything else is going to be fine, which is not necessarily true. There could be a lot more that could help her, like a job. I want to reestablish that visibility doesn't necessarily mean that things are better. That just because we are going to state that there is a trans issue, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has been dealt with or that it has been talked about properly, or that we interacted with the trans community at all when talking about it. There's this need for ongoing discussion and a need to critically think about movies that suggest being progressive, and to not be afraid to look to the past for good representation, because there is good representation in the past. Nothing's perfect, but there's a lot of good film and good media that we can look back at and really be proud of that it was made, and try to emulate and try to continue that good work, and to not assume that just because it was older that it's automatically going to be worse, and just because something's new doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be good, because people are still really biased and still really like our normal ways of thinking and want to keep going with that. And I think that we should question that, and we should keep going and keep trying to make better and better media. And we should totally look to Dog Day Afternoon and movies that are older for that, because there are some really cool characters, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that we screwed up. It just means that we're just going to keep going, and we're going to keep making better media. Yeah. Bye.